Attempting to live stream, and we are live on all the things. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's the end of the month of April. Today, we're going to be talking about how to avoid closing day chaos. You may or may not know, but there's a lot of things that can happen within like the last 24 hours before you go and sign the paperwork to own a new property or sell your property. So I brought on one of our real estate attorneys, Marc Cervantes, with us today, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Marc and I have been working together for 100 years, it feels like, but for a really long time. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sabrina Beer. I'm the Director of Digital Media and Education here at Proper Title, your local Chicagoland and Indiana title insurance agent and national commercial agent. Marc, thank you for joining me. It's so good to see you. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Sabrina. My name is Marc Cervantes. I'm one of the partners at Cervantes, Chad & Prince. We are a law firm here in Chicago with having offices in Burr Ridge. We primarily focus on real estate related matters. I head up our Chicago office, which does all our transactional work that can go from your individual condominium to a large commercial building. So we do, our tagline is we do everything real estate related.
And they do everything real estate. These guys know so much stuff, y'all, that if you have a real estate related or adjacent question, Marc and his partners are going to know the answer, I promise you. All right. Let's talk about a resident. I know you also do commercial, but let's specifically talk today about residential real estate transactions. I want to kind of talk about some of the, if you will, pitfalls or things to be aware of. I know when we originally talked about this live we were going to do today, you wanted to call it T-24, right? So let's talk about some of those things. So one of the biggest things, and I want you to explain this to the world like nobody's ever heard of it before, is post-closing possession. Can you just explain what that means first?
Sure. So the Chicagoland area, it's a hot market. Everybody says there's no inventory and that, there's 100 people lined up to look at a place, and, you really have to have your offers stand out on the buy side. So what we've been seeing a lot lately are post-closing possession. That means that the seller gets to stay in the property for a period of time after closing. It's a misnomer that it's a rental agreement. But as attorneys, there's a landlord-tenant ordinance we try to avoid. So we call it a post-closing possession agreement. So the parties are not landlord and tenant, it's still seller and buyer. But in a nutshell, it is the time frame from which the seller gets to stay in the property post-closing.
And Marc, in order to avoid a tenant-landlord relationship and be underneath the ordinance, especially in Chicago, which is pretty strict, is there a time frame for the amount of time that the seller can stay in that property post-closing?
Well, technically, if the buyer is getting a loan, the buyer is supposed to be in the property for within 60 days of closing. So we see timeframes from 2 weeks to a couple of months, a month and a half. It's really what the parties determine. So there is no set time frame on it. It's whatever the parties determine that they need.
Yeah. So I think that's the key, right? Is that if you're purchasing a property as your primary residence and getting a loan, that you need to occupy the property within 60 days as the buyer, right?
That's correct.
Typically. Well, we can talk about, there's so many nuances to post-closing possession, and that, everybody, is why you should use a real estate attorney to write up that post-closing possession agreement that Marc was mentioning. But one of the things I want to talk about is, when does the buyer actually get the keys to the property, can access the property when they want? When does the new owner get to utilize that property and get the keys to the property?
Well, so the parties will come up usually on the 8.0 contract, which is one of the majority form contract that a lot of the realtors use. There will be a set time frame, maybe 2 weeks. It's usually a set date. We like a set date on that. So we then extrapolate that information and we create our own agreement, because the underlying contract doesn't give all the nuances like who's paying insurance and all that. But with regards to keys, you could have a date, but All right, let's say it's going to be April 30th, which is coming up this week. It's the last day of the month. What time is it? Is it noon? Is it 5 p.m.? Is it 11:59 p.m.? It's really important that the parties hash that out, and usually it's left to the attorneys to hash that out, because not only do people have to get up, they got to clean the property. So it's very important for the parties to determine an exact time. A lot of people leave that out.
Mark, so if I buy a property and I close on it today, but I have a post-closing possession agreement with the seller and they're going to stay in the property for 2 weeks, let's just say, well, at the closing table today, I won't get keys to the property I now own?
It depends, because it just happened to me recently where the buyer's like, well, I should get keys because I just spent X amount of dollars on a property. Well, as attorneys, it's very helpful what the expectations are. So we will ask the buyers, like, look, you won't be able to access property. You own it. You won't be able to access it for, in your case, 2 weeks. Do you want keys at closing, like a set of front door or the lockbox code or things like that? Because you can't go in individually without giving them notice, because they're still habitating the property. So we've put as part of our process now, look, would you like keys? And I would say majority of people, they're like, look, if I can't get in anyways, I don't need keys. But then we do have clients say, look, I just spent all this money. I should have a set of keys. God forbid any accidents or emergencies occur.
Yeah. So another reason why it's important to use a real estate attorney when you're drafting that document, because all of these things, the time, the when you get the keys. And then the third thing I want to talk about, because again, y'all, we can talk about post-closing possession probably for 2 hours. Okay. But the other thing I want to talk about that comes up a lot is questions about a final walkthrough. Because typically before you close on a property, you'll come and check out the property prior to closing, make sure it's still in the same condition before you buy it. But if somebody's still living in it and hasn't left yet, but they're the actual seller, so how do you do that final walkthrough part?
So that's part of the agreement that we draft as well. We will ask my best practices is, look, you should see it before we actually close. So let's say we're closing today, you should do a final walkthrough, take videos and pictures, because there's all the seller's stuff is still going to be there. So you can't always rely on your actual inspection report, because that's what a lot of people rely on, is the picture of their inspection report. I like, get a snapshot of what it looks like the day that you closed, take videos, take pictures, and then you're going to do another walkthrough the day that possession is tendered to you, and make sure it's clean, that everything that's there that's supposed to be there, it takes the place of what you would have originally had anyways. But now you have a snapshot of what it was when the day you closed, and it might be 30 days later or 2 weeks later. And that's, now you have some compare and contrast with regards to that stain wasn't there, that hole wasn't there, those kind of things.
Yeah, that is great advice. That is great consult, because that's a little scary for people, especially, it's different when you're buying an investment property and you have a tenant in there versus like this is going to be your home and you're buying it from the person that previously owned it, and are they hiding anything, etc.
And it might not even be about hiding. It might be there's an area rug there that nobody's pulled up for 10 years and there's now discoloration.
Acceleration. Yeah, sure. Which brings me to my next point. I want to move away from post-closing possession and actually talk a little bit about this final walkthrough that you usually do within 24 hours of closing. And, prior to this call, you and I were having a little of a discussion because there's multiple thought processes. Do you do it literally right before you close, or do you do it the day before so that you have some time? Let's talk through that a little bit. What do you recommend?
If it was up to me, because literally right before this call, I'm having a post-closing, I'm having a final walkthrough issue. I mean, do you believe a sconce should stay somewhere, Sabrina?
A sconce? Yes.
Oh, well, that's the fight I'm having today at my closing this afternoon.
Oh.
So, my clients did a walkthrough this morning. We're closing at 2:00 this afternoon. And after this call for the next, couple hours, I have a fight over 2 sconces.
So the seller took them.
Yes.
The buyer was expecting them to be there.
They should be, because they're attached.
They're attached, and it wasn't written in the contract or any attorney correspondence that they were taking them.
Well, it was written. We wrote anything attached stays. So that's the fight I get to have this afternoon. But the nice thing about it is I have several hours. They didn't do it an hour before the closing. That's, sometimes that's, if somebody's just moving out, maybe that's all you have. But then the added pressure, is there a truck waiting outside? They have to go back to work maybe. And now my negotiations are happening at the table as I'm signing closing documents as well. So here, at least I have some runway with regards to negotiating the issues that I'm going to have this afternoon.
So do you recommend, let's say you have a 9 a.m. closing, do you recommend that the buyer do the final walkthrough the night before
Yes.
or the morning of?
The night before. And, the contrarian view on that is, well, we want to have a snapshot or view of the property as close to the time we were going to buy it. I mean, really, yes, you can give me examples where there's a, historical flood that happened the night before and things like that. But I personally, on the legal end, would rather have the time to negotiate it and digest what happened during the final walkthrough, as opposed to just doing it at the table at the closing.
Yeah, totally. Because otherwise, you're fighting, and like you said, is there a truck waiting outside? Is there, and you're kind of in this like uncontrollable
Correct.
situation.
It adds more pressure. Not that having final walkthrough issue is good anytime, but you're not making split decisions based on you're not weighing the totality.
Right. So best practice you would recommend is at least have some amount of time in between the final walkthrough and the closing to resolve any issues that may have happened.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's good. And so some of the things, like you said, these sconces, can you just briefly talk about, because I feel like sometimes sellers are like, well, I just left the TVs, right? Because they didn't want to take them down and deal with them. And they probably want to buy new TVs when they move to their old place. And they just leave them there. And the buyer's like, I don't want this crap.
Oh, yeah. So during our attorney review process, we try to be, we're trying not to have a 40-page letter. But, we've had several years of experience. So we try to add everything in there. But, people are going to be people. And they'll say, look, we left you all these paint cans. Great. But the paint cans are 40 years old. TVs are the bane of my existence because when they do take them, they leave big holes in it. So we try to head that off at the pass by saying that all holes made by the TV brackets have to be patched and painted. And then it gets into, well, a lot of buyers are like, well, they should have painted the whole wall. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but those are things we try to avoid. Look, a nail hole is a nail hole, but if you're going to take off a whole bracket, everybody knows how big those brackets are now.
Yeah, for sure. Man, the paint cans is like just this like thorn in my side whenever I was selling real estate full time, because it's like you go and sometimes there's 20 cans of paint that are, like you said, 40 years old. Like no one's using them.
They probably have lead in them.
Yes, well, that part. And you can't just throw them in the dumpster.
Correct.
So it's like a whole hassle to get rid of. And so many sellers are just like, I'll just leave them. They want them. And it's like, no. Do you write that in your letter now?
We look at what's actually, most of the form contracts have several different things on it. So we try to do a catch-all saying that if it's not on one of those, we don't want it. And if you think, seller, you're giving us something that is useful to us, please ask us first. Because, look, a toolbox of tools, that might be helpful, but just ask us. It's not on the contract, but, maybe we don't want it, but it's the bigger things because, how many times I've had to call 1-800-JUNK at a closing table to get things out because they've left things, we left you a grill. Well, the grill, like I said, is 40 years old. What good is that grill going to do me? And I have a brand new grill.
Right. I've even heard people leave a couch and just be like, seller thinks they're doing you a favor.
Oh, absolutely. And they said, well, we could have just charged you for it. I'm like, now it's going to cost my clients money to call a junk removal place.
Yeah. So best to do the final walkthrough where it gives some time so that we can resolve any issues that happen prior to being stressed out and almost like a vulnerable situation when you're at the closing table trying to deal with these things, right?
Yeah, because my only leverage as a buyer's attorney is, are you willing not to close today? And nobody wants that.
Right.
But sometimes you have to pull that lever, and a lot of times people are like, no, we've got everything set up, we've got all the utilities set up, so your leverage point is really reduced.
Yeah. Yeah. Great tips. I want to talk about something that is on the rise and has been on the rise for quite some time, which is fraud, specifically wire fraud, because the buyer is wiring so much money over to purchase this property, and most of the time it's their entire life savings, and they've made a borrowed money from a parent. They took, they're taking out a loan, all this stuff, and they're investing in this huge purchase, probably the largest purchase of their lifetime. And can we talk a little bit about how to avoid wire fraud?
So, first and foremost, picking up the phone. So, my biggest, look, I email just like anybody else, but I speak to all my clients. And the day before closing is usually not the first time I've spoken to my clients. I've spoken to my clients from the onset of the transaction, throughout attorney review, throughout their mortgage contingency, and also right before closing. Before we got on this call, I actually called 3 people because I've got 3 closings tomorrow, where each one of them I go through, have you received the wire instructions? And every title company is a little bit different. Proper Title sends the wire instructions via secured email. I say, and everybody is heightened with regards to scams, right? So I always call them, all my clients, and say, look, you're going to be receiving an email from the title company. It's not going to be technically from the title company. It's going to be from this third-party source. You're going to then log in, and it's going to be an encrypted email. A lot of people is like, oh, I thought that was a scam, so I deleted it. So we have this conversation. Once that conversation is had, I make sure they recall the title company to reconfirm the routing number and account number, and we go over what that person is going to wire, all by phone. And I may end up regurgitating that in an email to them, but I've spoken with them because people have sent money to third-party scammers.
Yeah. I got to jump up on my little soapbox, because I've said this like 4 times already in this conversation with you, Mark. This is why it is so important to use a real estate attorney for your real estate transactions, you guys. Like, not somebody that just dabbles in real estate here and there, the same way you wouldn't have a heart doctor work on your lungs, right? It's the same thing. Please use a real estate attorney for your real estate transactions, because all of this that Mark is talking about, this is what they do every day, all day long. So they're going to be able to advise you and protect you in ways that an attorney that just dabbles in real estate is not going to be able to do. Sorry, I said it.
And I'm all about the personal phone calls, and a lot of people don't like picking up the phone.
Yeah.
But I get a lot more done in a 5-minute phone call than 50 emails.
That's right. I wonder if it's a little bit, especially, when you're calling to, about wire instructions and all these things. I wonder if it's going to be an additional issue for the younger generation, because I have two young 20-something daughters, and they don't want to talk on the phone, yet they'll randomly do FaceTime. So I'm not sure what that's all about, but they don't want to talk on the phone at all. Like, picking up the phone is so foreign. Like, do you find that maybe with I know young 20s, there's not a ton of buyers, but do you find that some of the younger generation has such a hard time getting on the phone?
I do. So that's why I call them like 10 times in a row. I said, look, we can only go through this if you call me. So I basically force them to talk to me.
I mean, we got to do what we got to do, right?
Yeah.
So what else do you think, like, in the last minute or two we have here, as far as this T-24, the things that we should really be aware of, whether you're a buyer, a seller, a real estate broker, I mean, even any other attorneys and mortgage lenders that are listening, like, these are all such important things to really avoid in order to have a smooth closing. We talked about post-closing possession and setting expectations, final walkthroughs, again, setting expectations in addition to giving enough time to problem solve, and then wiring money so you don't lose your money. Is there anything else that you think is just really hugely important?
I would just say that, from the time somebody signs their original contract, just to review it with the clients, and the clients just to remember, because all of a sudden we go through everything that we're going to sit down and talk about ahead of time. So it's not a surprise. real estate taxes are really important. And with regards to, their closing cost credits and all those things, not just the numbers, but the whole concept. The other, if you have a soapbox, I have a soapbox. It's home warranties. Ooh. So realtors put home warranties on contracts, and our office, because we've had so many issues with them, we try to put that in our attorney review letters. Who's getting it? When are they getting it? Who's paying for it? So our office policy is we would rather have our buyers get a credit so they can pick their own home warranty, and have that set lined up and just be reimbursed for it at the time of closing. I can't tell you how many times we get to a closing table and nobody's ordered the home warranty. Nobody's thought about it. It was on the contract, but that was 40 days ago. So if you're going to get a home warranty or you're going to give a home warranty, work out the details before the day of closing.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that one. Y'all, I mean, we can sit here and talk about all the different things, but instead, when you have a real estate transaction, just call Marc. His contact information is here below, and it will be in the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or YouTube. So just comment below, and Marc will be sure to answer you. But people like Marc have such a plethora of information. And so I thank you so much for letting me tap into your brain, because I always learn something new. I didn't even think about the home warranties. I bet that's a huge issue.
You know how much time I've spent on home warranties and how many emails.
Well, you're about this time about sconces, so I can't even imagine.
Oh yeah. I'll let you know how the sconce fight goes this afternoon.
Marc, thank you so much for your time this morning. I'll let you get back to saving the world one real estate transaction at a time. Thank you for letting me tap into your brain.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Be kind to each other.